Oliver is asking, sorry, Olivia is asking, remote imaging from internet and taking out the maximum data for a CMG. The challenge right now that if you want to do your own deployment over internet, a lot of the solutions has an egress cost to them. So if you put your deployment server up in Amazon or Azure, every time you download a file, it's going to cost you something. I have seen some clever tricks to make it cheaper. For example, David Segura, the gentleman behind OS Deploy and Cloud OSD or OSD Cloud. This is a cloud imaging solution that is pulling the WIM file as an ESD file from Microsoft CDN servers rather than from your deployment server. And he's pulling the driver packages from the vendors, Lenovo, Dell, HP, etc. And when you do it that way, it's a little bit slower in general, but it doesn't cost anything because those are free to download from. The minute you're starting to put content on a CMG or on a PSD server or MDT with PSD extended to it, you have to start to pay for content. What we have done to reduce the cost is just enabling branch cache. The Cloud Management Gateway supports that. MDT with the PSD extension supports that. What that basically means for you is that if you have your, this is internet, by the way, if you're asking. So if you have a deployment server app in Azure and Amazon, here, so Azure, Amazon, and you have an office down here with a bunch of machines. So supposed to be a computer, if you wonder. So now we have 3 computers. If you enable or embrace a little bit of peer-to-peer, you only pay for 1 download. Then that first client is sharing the content to others. And to download a 5 gig image, add in a driver package to it, maybe a few applications, we are usually talking about a 50-cent cost. So about $0.50 to deploy 1 machine. Without peer-to-peer, to deploy an office with 50 computers, it's obviously $25. But if you're using peer-to-peer, you only pay 50 cents, and then the first machine is sharing that content to others. It's like a cache server as a client. So that's a good way to keeping down CMG costs in general, especially if you're deploying to an office. Obviously, if you're deploying to machines that are at home, like just out there in the world, there is no point of enabling peer-to-peering at all. They can't reach each other anyway. So then in this case, you'll have to pay 50 cents for every imaging that you do there. Or you have to send out USB sticks to them, but that's actually probably more expensive than paying that 50 cents for the download. Yeah, that's my take on it at least. And as a bonus, it will be faster to deploy as well. There are a ton of companies doing cloud imaging internally just to be able to leverage peer-to-peer even with deployment solutions like MDT. Or if I have ConfigMgr doing imaging, they're leveraging peer-to-peer that way so they don't have to have distribution points everywhere just to get the content out quickly. The folks at 2Point, where I do most of my work these days, they have a free OSD toolkit. If you need support for it or anything like that, then it's paid, but the toolkit itself, it's a free toolkit. This is intended for ConfigMgr and MDT currently, and it enables peer-to-peer in WinPE basically. So it adds bits and branch cache into WinPE, which the ConfigMgr boot image doesn't have by default, but the tool adds it. So you can do peer-to-peer with branch cache that way also. So if you haven't seen this one, community tool like anything else, good stuff. The commercial version does have some perks, but the free one does peer-to-peer, and it does it well. For those of you there were a follow-up question regarding Autopilot, basically on the same context as the CMG downloads. How can we speed things up? Obviously, you don't have to worry about cost because these days you don't pay for anything coming out of Intune. It's part of the subscription. I believe that was the early days of Intune. There was some cost connected to downloads, but not any more. It hasn't been for quite a while. But you can speed it up. So what you can do, and we will talk about this in our session tomorrow as well on the summit, but you can set up cache servers for Autopilot and other Intune type deployments because packages in Intune does support delivery optimization as long as you pick the right package type, and that right package type is Win32 apps. And so that's where you want to be anyway. But that way you can speed up your deployment quite a bit by having local cache servers caching content. The downside is, I wouldn't say downside, you actually have to set up a site server, a config managed site server just to get the cache. Because as of right now, that cache server is bundled into ConfigMgr. But if you guys have Intune, you typically have a license for ConfigMgr. So you just need to set up a VM that is a cache server only. It has nothing to do with ConfigMgr otherwise, but it's just there to be a cache server. And you can script all that. I have hydration scripts you can download that spins up a site server. Just enable it for a cache server, and off you go. Microsoft is working on the standalone version of this, but so far it has not come into any public preview or anything like that. So it will be a while until that one is available. So for now, you're stuck with the ConfigMgr version, but you can set it up as a cache server only and don't use the ConfigMgr part at all. You just have to be a ConfigMgr server so you can add the role.